Freilichen Chanukah. This is Gemara in Zevachim Daf Tzadi Beis, the Daf for the first day of Chanukah, Baruch Hashem, and we pick it up on the bottom of Tzadi Aleph Amid Beis, approximately 15 lines from the bottom. First word in line is Avshem Kulam Leishim, middle of a discussion. Rebbe figuring out Doin Mina, that whether we learn something in the topic and we apply it elsewhere or not. So we begin with the Kasha Amr Le Rapapa Abaye. Rapapa asks Abaye, Ime Mincha Maisila. Rabbi, if Rabbi learns it out from the carbon Mincha, as the Gemara just suggested, the Kuli Alma, then according to everyone, Daimina Mina. So if he learns it out from the Mincha, then everyone's going to agree that we learn out about bringing a nidava of shemen from the carbon mincha, and we learn everything out from the carbon mincha. And therefore, what's going to come out that how much oil do you have to donate? A log. Why? Because that's the same amount of oil that's brought with the carbon mincha, which we're learning it out from Ella. So rather, it says, Rabbi Tabai, note the Kasha is Rabbi Me Ezrach, Garmila, Rabbi learned it out from Ezrach by the Nisachim. So says the Gemara, Amli Rav Huna, Bereder, Rav Nasser, Rav Papa. 1 second, Rav Papa. Mimat is Amrit, Achi, you able to say what you just said? Vatani, we learned to the price of carbon mincha malamed. Shem is Navin Shemen. For the lashon of carbon mincha, we learn out that what? That there wasn't a dava of oil. Vekama on how much? Shaloi shalugin. Oman shamas lay down shalugin. It's Rebbe. And yet the kamaisi lami carbon. That even though we're learning it out from a carbon, he learns that what? It's going to be 3 lug. Not like you, Rav Papa, just said. Amalei Rav Papa responds. Tanya. If you have an explicit brisa, then okay, says Rav Papa, and I will back down. So says the Gemara. After finishing discussing the Nadava of Shemen, let's move on to Yayin. Omar Shmuel, Hamis Yadev Yayin, Sonu donates wine. Again, the wine is its carbon. He's bringing the wine to the base of Mikdash, and he sprinkles it on the fire of the Mizbech Mai Taima. He brings it, and the Kayin puts it on top of the fire of the Mizbech. Says the Gemara, Ma'ik Taimad, Amar Kravi Yain Takriv, L'naseich Chatzi Yahin, Ishe Reach Lichayach Lashem. That we see it says you bring Yain, Nischa Yain, and what? You put it on top of the Mizbeach. Frak the Gemara of a Kamechabi. But if you're putting wine on top of the fire, what are you in essence doing? Says the Gemara, you're being Mechabe. You're extinguishing the fire. Says Gemara, kibbutz mixes lo shmei kibbutz. That little bit that it's mechabe is inconsequential. Frek the Gemara, Eini is that shuv Amar Rav Nachman Amar Rav Avua Hamayrid Gacheles Melgav Mizbeach. Someone takes down 1 coal from on the Mizbeach, v'chkiban, he extinguishes it. What did Rav Nachman say? Chayiv. We see that you're even chayiv for 1 single coal. Says Gemara, Deleka Elahai. When did Rav Nachman say you're chayiv for the coal? Is when there's 1 coal. So if you take the last gacheletz, the last coal, and you extinguish it, then that's Rav Nachman says that you're chayiv. But says the Gemara, but in our case that wouldn't be true. When you sprinkle it on top of the mizbeach, it's true. It does put out a little bit, but that little bit is not consequential. By saying a second, it's keep the mitzvah shiny. Here it's a mitzvah. Since the yayin is a nidava, and therefore the dinam are different. Tashma says, let's try again. Since the Torah says you got to be Torahim, you got to remove the ashes from the mizbeach. I would think first extinguish the ashes and then separate them from on the mizbeach. Amrit. So to answer this, say no, lo yichve. Don't extinguish it, because the Torah says you're not allowed to put out the mizbeach. What do we see? We see that even when he's doing a mitzvah, he's doing the Trumas Hadesha and the separation of the ashes. And even during that Shas mitzvah, we see you have to be careful of putting out the fire. So what about by us? Says the Gemara, shiny awesome. I'll tell you what, 4 lines to the bottom. The Yosef in Natar. You could sit and you could wait, and since you could wait, you don't have to actually put out the fire. But it's not a kasha by us. You're sprinkling wine and you're going to make the fire be machabim and mix. Says Tashma, bring your right. Yain k'div Rabbi Akiva. Wine, according to Rabbi Akiva, that says it's a separate carbon lasfalim. It's poured into the bowls. Shem and k'div Rav Tarfin lishim. Voitan yor yain esech lisfalim oina lishim. Amre lo yechve. Like Kasha, Rav Yudah, Rav Shimon, like we just saw, where the wine is going to be poured. Lemeimra, is this to say the Shmuel Rav Shimon's relay? It sounds like Shmuel is yes agreeing with Rav Shimon. The Kasha is Omer Shmuel. Says Shmuel, you'll have to extinguish a piece of burning metal in Rosh Hashanah on Shabbos. Why? In order to prevent someone from getting hurt. Aval, that's only by burning metal, says the Brisa. But as we turn over to Sadi Beis, explains the Gemara. But what if you're putting it out, if it's actual wood? So says the Gemara, Bedavar Sheina Miskavein. So like Rav Shimon that it's mutter. Gufa. So like Rav Yehuda, it's going to be usher. So they're picking pieces of this machlokes apart. Omer Rav Huna, says Rav Huna, Nisachim Shenitmu Oislem Ma'aracha B'fnei Atzman. If the libations came tamei, you make a separate Ma'aracha and you burn them there, Visarfim, and you burn them. Why do you have to make its own fire to burn them? Mishum Shenemar Ba'Kodesh Ba'ish Disraifu Tanam Yachi Nacharaya Adam Vashem V'Menachas Nisachim Shenitmu. What do? We haven't had him in a while. Rav Chana from Baghdad. I see Li Biasara. Bring me 10 people and bring. And I'm going to say in their presence, corroborating the din that we just said. Hadron Allah Kol Adadir, a nice short parek. Definitely time for also a nice short chazar. But now we go weiter into the 11th parak here in Zevachim, and we go into a halacha that we've spoken about prior, which is the big day kahuna. Whether it's a kohen gadol, whether it's a kohen hedyot, the absolute and critical care necessary to keep the begadim crystal clean. And if it gets a drop dirty, you got to clean it. Says the Mishnah, Adam chata shenat beged arizeton kibos. The blood of the chatas they got on the garment, you got to launder it. Even though the pasuk only speaks about chatais, which are eaten, that you have to clean the clothing. Says the Gemara, says the Mishnah, tunas kibus. It's true, it says it about a chatos, but it's applicable in all cases. Shenemar teres a chatos, teira achas lakol chatais. And therefore, if the clothing gets dirty, you're going to have to clean it. Chatos pesula in damaton kibos. What about a chatos which is pasul? Then no. Beishlos has a kosher. Beishlos has a kosher. Ezi shaislos has a kosher. What does that mean? Shalana v'shenitma. It was kosher, then it stayed overnight, then it became tamei. V'sheyatzo went outside. V'ezi shaislos has a kosher. Shenishchat chutz zman. If the etzim shchita was done with a mindset to eat a chutz zman, a chutz l'mekayimai, then it never was kosher. Kablu psulim v'zarko was tama. You did the kabbalah zerika with such a mindset, then it was never kosher. Says the Gemara, Dam chata shenites v'chulu v'iter achas chol chatayis avilu chata sa'iv nami. Frak the Gemara, based on the cloud that the Mishnah just said that all chatayis are created equal. Frak the Gemara, does that mean that even if a chatas, even if the bird got in the clothing, the dam got in the clothing of the kohen, has to be laundered? Allah matanya, why do we learn in the Brayso yachal take dam chatas oif ta'on kibos? I would think that the blood of a chatas requires kibos. Tamalei merzois. No, only this, meaning and not a chatas oif, only other chatais. So Amrei Shakim Shemerka Para Markra Tisha Chet Bishenish Chatais Akasa Midaber. Any carbon that is shechted, of course, a oif is not considered shchita. Why? Because it's called milika. Ask Marv Emin Achaz Akasa Midaber. But maybe it's only talking about a chatos, which is in Kidachsev, as the pasuk seemingly says, "B'makom kodesh te'ochel aval penimius loy." Says the Gemara, Rabbi Nachmana, Tairas. Taira includes with the word Tairas. Yachiv, that's true. Maybe she even come to include the chatos oif. Nami. Mir Nachmana zois. Umar is the classical kasha. You're including one, you're excluding the other. How do you know to do such? Mistavra. Techatas be'ema benimi is havalei rabuyi. Why? That if it gets on your clothing, you have to unkibus, you have to launder it. Why does that make sense? Shekain behema shchitas safon v'kabomas kli. The reason is because it's an animal which you shechted in the north. You catch it. Kabbalah bekli as we turn over to Sadi Bezim Beis. V'karen, and it's put on the horn of the mizbeach. That's why use your finger. V'choida, and it's on the edge. V'ishim, and it's put on the fire. Frak tomorrow, wait. Adir rabba chatazoy v'avle rabbu yishkein chutz k'maisa v'achilu k'maisa. There are elements that it's the same as the chatazoy. Says the Gemara in the third line. You're right, but hanoch nefishi. These are more similarities. Rav Yosef Amar. Says Rav Yosef a different teretz why the chatas oif, the bird is excluded. Amar kraya chalena lezu v'loy lacher. It's been a chalos miyat akasav. Vel zayis lamali. So going back, so what do you need zayis? Ilav zayis have amin yachlena orchas yachlena orchas dikra. I would have thought that what does it mean you eat it? That's just the way the Torah talks about it, but it doesn't actually exclude anything. Kamash malan that comes to exclude what we're discussing. Rabba Amar, says Rabba Amar Kra Asher Yazeb is Zois that goes medaber sprinklings. Vatanya. Avabish it goes medaber el menachalois leinin merika ushetifa. Even though the Torah is only talking about eating with Avish it goes medaber el menachalos. Excuse me. Answers the Gemara leinin merika ushtifa. That's when there's a chalik if you eat it. Avleinin kibos Asher Yazek sev. It'll talk to all cases. If this is true, me violates backwards. You're right. You have to switch around the lashon of the Mishnah. Chatzos is excluded. Says the Gemara, theoretically, but Mirachmana zois yachi chitzaina nami loy riba. Frak the Gemara the chatas chitzaina as well nami loy should not be included. Ribrachmana Torah. So again we have the inclusion and the exclusion. So frak the Gemara the classical kasha. So ma roy is how do you know what to include and what to exclude? Mistavra chatas be'ima v'lerabiyeh. Why? Shkebein shchidas havikabal's karm ve'etzva. On the corner and it's on the fire. Says the Gemara, Hanach Fisha, and these have more similarities. And one last shayla of the day, Boyi Rav Havin, were 15 lines in the wide lines. Chatos ha'oif she'echlis dama bitzavara bifnim. A chatos ha'oif that the dam was brought in while the neck is still, while the blood is still on its neck. What's the din? Savara kikli shari tummy, and it says if it's in a kli shari, so mifsal oldama kisavar be'ema midama. The first apostle. Amar Achmana answers the Gemara of Elohi Bisara. Says the Torah. Actually, oldama bisavar be'ema and midama Amar Achmana of Elohi Bisara. So Tashmat Spingaraya Pirchasav and Chasav Nim v'Chazra. That what happens if the chatas ha'oif was flat thrashing around? And went into the Beis Hamikdash and went outside. Ksheira halacha is it is kosher. Ha'echnisa, but if you brought it in psula, ulataymech fires back to Gemara. Kavi kachay kachem diktani perchasav yasa adara and v'chazer ksheira. By kachay kachem, we said it's kosher. Ha'itzi, you're gonna tell me psula? Lahayatzasa lachatz. But rather, you know what it means? It just means that you brought it out. Excuse me. Hachanami says the Gemara. So saying we need by us to keep everyone on the same page. Pick it up from the Shelev Ravav in the next year. V'siyata Dishmaya.